show opens in London in the year 2099 with a man named Will sitting alone on a park bench. Soon a young girl named Alita arrives and sits beside him. He asks her what kind of mess she's in now. Alita blames him for getting her into the mess and says she didn't expect him to have dangerous friends. She talks about how she tried to save Wilf once but she failed. She informs him that she's going to save the world, but Wilf believes that it's too late. However, Alita clarifies that she's not talking about this world. The scene then changes to a small town in the US in the year 2032. We meet a young girl named Flynn Fisher who is busy doing chores at home. Later, she brings her blind and sick mother a cup of coffee and her medicine, but when she notices that some pills are missing, she becomes furious. Flynn then storms out to the trailer next to the house to confront her brother Burton. It turns out Burton is a former military member who was injured during his service, which is why he also needs to take painkillers regularly. Flynn accuses him of being selfish and taking their mom's medicine, but Burton is busy playing a video game. He mentions that something important is happening tonight which can provide them with money for more medicine. He then hands her the headset and asks her to win the level for him. Flynn is enraged that he's trying to dodge her question by distracting her with a toy. However, she finally agrees to play the game for him after some convincing. Following this, Flynn enters the VR experience and we soon learn that she's a pro at it. She easily beats the bad guys and finds the map they need. Even though many players struggle with this tough level, she has managed to finish it in just 10 minutes. After winning the game, Flynn asks Burton to transfer the money to her account and walks away. In the next scene, she arrives at her workplace, which turns out to be a 3D printing shop. There, her co-worker Billy says that she's wasting her talent by working at this place. She asks how much Burton gets paid for playing games and Flynn responds that it's more than he deserves. Billy then suggests that she could earn even more if she uses his avatar and hides the fact that she's a girl. However, Flynn claims she's done with that because it's not the real world. That evening, when she returns home, Burton stops her and shares that he received a game from a Colombian company for beta testing. He explains that he got it because he crossed level 100 in another game. However, it wasn't actually him who achieved that, but Flynn, so he asks her for her help once more and reveals that they've been offered a lot of money for the job. Excited by the offer, Flynn agrees and gets ready to play the game. That he received a game from a Colombian company for beta testing. He explains that he got it because he crossed level 100 in another game. However, it wasn't actually him who achieved that, but Flynn, so he asks her for her help once more and reveals that they've been offered a lot of money for the job. Excited by the offer, Flynn agrees and gets ready to play the game. This better not be Lord of Ringgollum. Shortly after, the game begins and it transports Flynn to London in the year 2099. She shows up as Burton's avatar and rides a motorcycle through the city streets. She quickly notices that this simulation is unlike any game she's ever played before. Despite the strange and alien-looking robots around, the virtual reality of this sim feels incredibly real. Suddenly, a female voice speaks to her, welcoming her to the game. The voice then guides her to Buckingham Palace and instructs her to enter the building. Inside the palace, a company named Research Institute is hosting a party. The voice in the game instructs Flynn to approach a woman named Mariel and convince her to take her home. Following the instructions, Flynn starts flirting with Mariel and successfully seduces her. They then leave the party together and start making out in the car. Making out with your brother? No. Making out as your brother? Yeah. Following this, the voice tells Flynn to take out a glass ampule from her pocket and put it under Mariel's nose. Though frightened, Flynn remembers it's just a game and follows the command. As Mariel goes unconscious, a robot driver suddenly attacks Flynn, but she fights back and defeats it. After this, Flynn takes control of the car and drives to a different place while being guided by the voice. There, she finally meets the woman behind the voice, who introduces herself as Alita West. Flynn then begins to inquire about the game, but Alita says today's session is done, and they'll resume tomorrow. The next second, Flynn wakes up in reality, feeling extremely nauseous. Burton asks her about the experience, to which she responds that everything felt incredibly real. They later receive some money, and Flynn decides to go out and buy some pills for her mom. However, getting them from a legit pharmacy is too expensive, so she turns to some local thugs who sells the medicine on the black market. Unfortunately, these thugs start bullying her, and they demand more money than usual, since she can't afford it. They ask her to please them in other ways. They want her to do card tricks. Just as the deal is about to go sour, a man named Connor appears who is an amputee. It turns out he's another ex-military member and a former colleague of Burton's. Seeing Flynn being bullied, Connor threatens the thugs, demanding that they give her the medicine. They eventually comply and hand her the medication before parting ways. Later, the thugs meet their boss, Corbel, who is the drug kingpin of the town. He scolds them for being weak and getting bullied by a disabled guy like Connor. When Flynn returns home, she looks into Burton's trailer and finds him in intense pain. She is shocked by the sight of his back, which is covered in glowing spots and pulsating veins. It is revealed that he has suffered injuries due to the cybernetic implants that he was given during his time in the US military. The following morning, while Flynn is tending to her mother, she learns that Burton hasn't been stealing the pills. Instead, he's been giving their mom his own share of pills so that she can cope with her pain. Hearing this, Flynn goes to see her brother and apologizes for accusing him all this time. The two talk for a little while before she enters the simulation once more. Shockingly, she wakes up on an operating table and sees an eyeball in a jar nearby. Alita then commands some surgeons to remove one of Flynn's eyes and replace it with the one in the jar. It becomes clear that this eyeball belonged to Mariel, whom she had kidnapped during her previous simulation. After the surgery is complete, Flynn wakes up in a car with Alita. They soon arrive at a building where Flynn is granted access to a restricted room. But before they can proceed, a man named Daniel appears out of nowhere and starts attacking them. He pins Flynn to the ground and handcuffs her. He then takes out a sonic gun and tries to force Alita to reveal her companions, but she refuses. Moments later, Flynn manages to free herself and attempts to fight back, but Daniel succeeds in degloving her hand. She shockingly discovers a robotic skeleton beneath the human-like hand. Seeing this, Alita seizes the opportunity and quickly flees from the scene. Daniel then warns Flynn about the serious real-world consequences of her actions before ultimately killing her character in the game. If her world is a simulation, then so is mine. Wait, oh god. Suddenly, Flynn wakes up in reality and begins to vomit. She swears that she will never play this game again. After the traumatic incident, she spends the entire day lying on her bed, lost in deep thought. The next morning, the Colombian company that sent the video game contacts her on her phone. We see a man named Wilf, whom we saw in the opening scene. He warns Flynn that she is in imminent danger, with a $9 million bounty placed on her head on the dark web. He claims that he can only help her if she logs back into the game. Irritated by his story, she hangs up the call. That evening, Burton is hanging out with his ex-military boys when Flynn arrives and shares what Wilf told her. However, Burton laughs it off and says he'll contact the Colombian company tomorrow and tell them to screw off. After Flynn leaves, Burton's friends convince him to take the threat seriously, claiming that they have heard of similar incidents before. They then use their drones to scan the nearby area. To their horror, they discover that many armed mercenaries are approaching the house. On the other hand, we see Daniel, who is with his boss, Treacherous Newland. Treacherous is revealed to be a powerful woman and the head of the research institute. She reprimands Daniel for his recklessness in letting Alita escape, and he only apologizes. Daniel then informs her that the real person behind Burton's character is an ex-military personnel. He reveals that his men are on their way to Burton's house to kill him and his family. Meanwhile, at Flynn's house, Burton instructs her to get their mother into the basement. Soon after, the place comes under heavy attack, but Burton and his friends are prepared for it. They manage to hack the enemy's drone and pinpoint the killer's exact locations. A fierce shootout then ensues between the two parties, resulting in a lot of bloodshed. In the midst of this, the mercenaries gain the upper hand by hacking back their drones. Burton's team is running low on ammo, and it seems like they're about to be overpowered. However, Connor arrives just in time and helps his friends by eliminating the remaining mercenaries. The next morning, we are introduced to a wealthy Russian man named Liv, who appears to be Welp's boss. He reveals about the attack on Flynn's house last night and stresses that she's in danger. He then urges Welp to bring her into the peripheral, as she is the only person who can help find the missing Alita. Elsewhere, Flynn returns to the simulation, but this time she wakes up not as Burton, but as herself. Thank God. That was getting weird. This is because Daniel had destroyed his avatar last time. She then meets Welp, who appears to have given her this new body. That's weird too. Flynn is filled with questions, wondering if this is truly a simulated world and why the mercenaries are targeting her family. Welp then reveals to her that this isn't a simulation at all. She is actually in London in the year 2100. He explains that it's not time travel, but she is inside a peripheral, which is a robot body. Flynn is not physically in the future, but her mind is engaged in quantum tunneling, which is a form of data transfer. This process shifts her consciousness to the future, while her physical body remains in the past. Hearing this, Flynn dismisses it as nonsense and demands proof. Welp then brings up her mother's illness, revealing that she only has 4 weeks left to live. He explains that her mother has glioma, which is why she's been hiding from the family. He shows Flynn her mother's obituary in a newspaper, which leaves her in shock. Welp then explains that they have a medicine that can cure her mother's illness. Flynn worries about the cost, but he reassures her that money is not an issue. He asserts that he has already sent the formula to her local pharmacy, paid the necessary fees, and all Flynn needs to do is pick it up. Yeah, Amazon's really good in the future. It can deliver to the past. It's no problem. Wilf claims that his people can help her, but in return, she must help them find Alita. With this, Flynn decides to exit the game for now. Upon coming back to reality, she witnesses Burton and his friends dealing with the aftermath of the shootout and burying dead bodies, slackers. She then heads to the town to pick up her mother's new medication, sent by Wilf. When she returns home, she asks her mother about her illness. The latter honestly admits that she has glioma and doesn't have much time left. She apologizes for keeping the seriousness of her illness a secret, but claims she only did it to protect her children. This devastates Flynn, but she is hopeful that the medicine will be able to cure her mother. After some time, she talks with Burton and reveals the truth about the game's reality. She also informs him about their mother's illness and the medicine given by Wilf. Upon hearing this, Burton becomes furious and insists that they can't trust Wilf. He urges Flynn not to use the medicine, but she admits that she already has. "I trust Future Man. He has a future plan." The siblings then get into a heated argument and Burton insists that he should log into the game instead. "I trust Future Man. He has a future plan." The siblings then get into a heated argument and Burton insists that he should log into the game instead. However, Flynn opposes the idea and asserts that she will fix the situation. Later, she logs into the simulation and meets Wilf once more. He takes her to a gathering and introduces her to the other members of his team. Flynn observes extinct animals brought back to life, moving tattoos, and various other future technologies. However, she is unimpressed and demands to know what is happening and why people are after her family. She questions the group about their pursuit of Alita, and they reveal that Alita used to work for the Research Institute and has access to the past world. Without her, they have no connection to their past society, so she is very crucial to them. Flynn then inquires about the medicine they sent her and whether it really works. Everyone falls silent until a man steps forward and admits that the drug has only a 57% success rate. Hearing this, Flynn becomes furious, and she declares that she won't cooperate with them unless they help her and her family. Returning to her world, Flynn informs Burton about everything and reveals that the people from the future are going to help them, starting by giving them $250,000. Since they can't directly deposit it into their account, the funds will arrive in unsuspicious ways. That evening, at the bar, Burton's cousin unexpectedly wins the lottery, and the siblings realize it must be the doing of future people. Or it was a coincidence, and the future people just got very lucky. As they celebrate this happy moment, the drug lord, Corbel, keeps on staring at them. The siblings notice him, and they're visibly annoyed. That evening, we see Corbel playing a VR game and enjoying the company of a beautiful woman. His moment is interrupted by the unexpected arrival of Daniel. The latter gets straight to the point and offers him $10 million to kill Flynn and Burton. However, Corbel thinks it's a sick joke and immediately leaves the game. Later, he is in bed with his wife when he suddenly receives a message that $2.5 million have been deposited into his bank account. This shocks Corbel, and he realizes that the man in the game wasn't kidding. Around midnight, Flynn wakes up to the sounds of noises downstairs. She fears that the mercenaries have once again come to hunt them down. But to Flynn's relief, it turns out to be her mother in the kitchen. The old woman explains that she was feeling hungry and went to get some food. Then, she shockingly reveals that she can see again. Burton also arrives at the same time, and both the siblings cry tears of joy, realizing that the medicine worked and their mother's eyesight has returned. The following day, Flynn logs back into the game and meets the group again. She recounts exactly what happened the first night she entered the game. Wilf explains to her that Mariel was an assistant security manager at the Research Institute, and Alita likely took her eye to gain access to the Institute's facilities. The group then reveals to Flynn that someone from their world has contacted Corbel from her town. This means that Corbel has been paid to get rid of her and her family. Taken aback, Flynn requests an hour to inform her brother of the news and immediately returns home. In the next scene, Wilf is sitting in his car while gazing at a house. We then see a flashback of the time when he and Alita were adopted by their parents. Initially, the couple only wanted to adopt Alita, but she refused to go without Wilf, who was then known as Wolfgang. After agreeing to change his name to Wilfred, the couple adopted him as well. They are afraid of wolves, you see, and prefer names that rhyme with Dilf. In the present, Wilf pays a visit to his adoptive mother to inquire about Alita's whereabouts. However, after a lengthy conversation, all he manages to learn is that she is supposedly living in a place where snow last fell in London. Meanwhile, Flynn informs her brother about Corbel being paid to eliminate them. Burton is furious and declares that he will kill the drug lord first, but Flynn insists on finding a peaceful solution. Later, Burton goes to meet Corbel and sits down to have a talk with him. He offers him $200 a week to stay away from his family. Corbel asks what mess he has gotten into, but he dismisses it as none of his concern. Initially, Corbel doesn't seem threatened or convinced by the offer. However, the situation changes when Connor shoots his glass with a sniper rifle from a distance. Startled, Corbel shakes hands with Burton and accepts the money. That was scary as shit. I'll do whatever you want. Elsewhere, Flynn is back in the game, where Wilf tells her about Alita's clue regarding the place where snow last fell in London. Flynn suggests that Snow could be a person's name. Suddenly, Wilf remembers a John Snow, a 19th century English physician who was one of Alita's childhood inspirations. With this potential lead, they quickly search for information on Dr. Snow and discover the address where he died. It appears to be north of the wall. Not long after, the two arrive at the address and discover that it is an abandoned facility. Flynn recalls that this is the same place where she underwent her eye surgery. As they explore the area, they realize Alita must have left the place in a hurry. They also find the two deactivated surgeons who had operated on Flynn's eyes. During their search for clues, Daniel suddenly appears with robot assassins. Flynn is attacked by a powerful sonic gun again, which almost makes her collapse, even in the real world. Thankfully, Will fights back intensely and manages to counterattack. After a tough battle, Flynn successfully subdues Daniel and asks why he's so determined to kill her. In response, he claims that Charisse won't stop chasing her because she took something from the research institute. But before he can explain further, a fallen robot suddenly stands up and kills him. It's then revealed that Charisse is controlling the robot remotely, and now she has killed her own henchman.